Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. So we're still in the new year mode, we're still in the planning phase for the new year, and if you're really thinking about getting serious with your finances, if you're really thinking about getting serious with your savings, your investments, you've probably heard these two words multiple times, and these are TFSA and RRSP. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're probably feeling like, oh, this is more confusing jargon, this is more confusing financial word salad. But here's the thing. Understanding these two accounts might be one of the most valuable financial decisions you will ever make, because the account you choose first can literally save you thousands of dollars over your lifetime. So today, we're cutting through all the noise and figure out which accounts actually make sense for you to start with. So no jargon, no complicated maths, just practical advice you can use right now. So let's dive in. Before you get into which one you should pick, let's make sure we're on the same page first and understand what these accounts actually are, because here's what's confusing. Both the TFSA and the RRSP, they're just containers. Think of them like special shelves in your financial cupboard where you can put investments. You can literally put the same thing in both accounts. You can put things like stocks, bonds, mutual funds, or even cash savings. Now, the magic isn't in what you put into this account. The magic is in how the government treats the money in each of these accounts. The TFSA is so beautiful. The TFSA is incredibly simple, and this is how it works. You take money that you've already paid tax on, like your after-tax savings, and you put it into this account. Then whatever happens to the money in that account, whatever growth that happens to your money in your TFSA, it stays in that account tax-wise. Like there's no extra taxes that will be charged on the gains you make in your TFSA. That's why it's a tax-free savings account. Your investments grow, you can take your money out, and the government doesn't want any single penny of it. So no more taxes you pay on the gains in your TFSA. Not when it grows, not when you withdraw it, never. And that's why it's called a tax-free account. And here's the best part. Once you withdraw from a TFSA, you get your contribution room back the following year. You see, it is incredibly flexible to work with. On the other hand, the RRSP works slightly differently, and this one is more about delaying taxes. Now, when you put money into an RRSP, you get to deduct that amount from your taxable income right now. So let's say you made 60,000 this year and you put about 10,000 into your RRSP. You only get to pay taxes on 50,000. That's a huge savings. That's a huge tax delay that you're getting. You get an immediate tax break. But as much as this is important, when you eventually take out this money in retirement, you'll still pay tax on it. But the bet we're making is when we get to retirement in, say, 65 years or 70, we should be in a lower tax bracket. That means the taxes you will pay at retirement will be lower than the taxes you would have paid right now. Let's say you're paying a 25% tax right now. In retirement, if your tax rate is somewhere between 10 to 15%, you can see that you've made some savings in the tax rate. And now that we understand what these accounts actually do, let's answer the question that we came here for. Here's what most financial advice actually gets wrong. They try to give you a universal answer. They try to say, oh, always start with your RRSP or always start with your TFSA, or the RRSPs are better. But your situation is unique, and the right answer depends on where you are in life right now. So instead of giving you a one-size-fits-all, let's walk through the different factors that should guide your decision. Now, the first factor to consider is your income level. And this is the big one. If there's one thing that matters more than anything else, it's how much you're making right now. Here's the deal. RRSPs are most powerful when you're in a high tax bracket and expect to be in a lower one around retirement age. The tax deduction, remember that tax deduction we talked about earlier, it is worth more if your tax bracket is high. At the moment, say if you're in a 30% tax bracket right now and at retirement you're around like 15%, that's like half of the taxes you would have paid. But if you're still very early in your career, let's say you're earning anywhere from $50,000 a year and below, your tax rate is relatively low. And so getting a tax deduction at a lower tax rate, it doesn't really make much sense. It doesn't really give you much value. And in fact, if your career grows, you'll be in a higher tax bracket much later. In that case, the TFSA makes more sense right now because you're locking in tax-free growth without giving much of a tax break right now. But if you're making solid income, let's say you're in a higher tax bracket, that RRSP deduction starts to look very, very attractive. So you're potentially saving a third or more of that contribution in taxes right now. Another thing to consider is your home ownership plans. And this is where things get really interesting. because there's a scenario where an RRSP actually makes sense if you are not in a high tax bracket yet. So Canada has this wonderful program called the Home Buyers Plan that lets you borrow up to a certain amount from your RRSP. And so far it's around 60K that you can borrow from your RRSP to put towards your first home, and you don't pay tax on that withdrawal. So if you're planning to buy a home in the next few years, contributing to an RRSP could give you a tax refund now, and you get to access funds for your down payment later. Just remember that you have to pay back that money to your RRSP over time, and I think it's around over 15 years, or it becomes taxable income. But the TFSA, on the other hand, you can withdraw your money at any time for any reason without any payback requirement. So if you want maximum flexibility for a home purchase, the TFSA might still win. But the RRSP has certain requirements around withdrawals and paying back towards a home. One other thing to consider is your retirement timeline. It is something people don't think too much about because they feel like retirement is so far down the line, and when we get there, we figure it out. But we're not doing that this year. We're not doing that on this channel. Know that your RRSPs are locked until retirement, more or less. However, you can withdraw from your RRSP early, but know that you will pay taxes on it and you lose that contribution room forever. That means it's gone. If retirement still feels like a lifetime away and you need money for other goals, maybe you want to start a business, maybe you want to go back to school, or maybe you want to have an emergency fund, then the TFSA gives you more flexibility in meeting those goals. So the flexibility of a TFSA is incredibly valuable if you know you will need the monies back, maybe like in a year or two, for any other plans you have. But if you're the type of person that struggles with discipline, and you know that if money is available to you, if money is easily accessible, you'll spend it, then the RRSP's forced savings might actually work in your favor, which means when you put your money in there in your RRSP, knowing that you'll pay taxes when you withdraw it, that knowledge itself would allow you, or it will force you to keep your money saved up. Now let's bring it all together with a few real world scenarios, and I'll use 3 scenarios to paint a perfect picture for us to understand. Scenario number 1, let's say you're just starting out in life. You're either in your early 20s or in your early 30s. You're making entry to mid-level income and you're not sure what the future will hold. Best thing to do, or the best place I'll recommend to start, is with a TFSA. At this point, you want to get comfortable with investing. You want to build up a cushion of savings that you can easily access if life throws you any curveballs, if life throws any bumps your way. And on the other hand, you can enjoy watching your money grow tax-free. So as your income rises through your 30s into your 40s and you move into a higher tax bracket, then you can start thinking about using an RRSP. Now, looking at the second scenario where you're earning good money, at this point, you're already established in your career, you're probably in a higher tax bracket, and your retirement is close, but it's still a couple of years away, maybe like 2 decades away. This is now in RRSP territory. That tax deduction that you have is currently working for you, so you need to key into that, and you're likely to be in a lower tax bracket when you retire. The game plan here is to max out your RRSP contributions if you can, and if you have money left over, add that into your TFSA, if you still have room available in there, of course. The third scenario is more of a hybrid, and this is one that I actually use personally for myself. And the good thing is you don't have to choose one. You can use both your TFSA and your RRSP at the same time. If you can afford it, there's nothing wrong with contributing to both accounts, both TFSA and RRSP. The common strategy is to contribute to your RRSP up to a point where you get a very nice tax refund, and then you put that tax refund into your TFSA. Let's say you get a very nice tax return of around maybe $2,000 or $3,000. If you put that into your TFSA, it goes a significant way because the TFSA annual contribution limit is $7,000. That way, you're getting the best of both worlds, which is a tax refund from your RRSP flows into a tax-free savings account. Win-win on both sides. The immediate tax break on one hand flows into a long-term tax-free growing account. Now that we've talked about several scenarios to work with, we've talked about how to use a TFSA and an RRSP, we're going to talk about the common mistakes that people make with these accounts, because even with the best intentions, it's easy to mess it up. Now, the first mistake I see people making a lot is they leave their TFSA as just a savings account where they put only cash inside. You see, a lot of Canadians open a TFSA at the bank and they just put only cash in there, meaning it's just earning like a nominal 1% interest per year, which is very, very small. Now, remember that the TFA is a container, which means you can put anything in there. You can put cash, you can put stocks, you can put ETFs, you can put bonds. What I'm essentially saying is you can put things that would give you higher return than just a 1% bank return on cash. So if your TFSA is not growing, if you're not putting items that will grow in your TFSA, you're pretty much wasting the tax-free growth potential of that account. The second common mistake a lot of people make is they over-contribute to these accounts. Both of these accounts have annual contribution limits that change every year, and if you go over them, the penalties are not so pretty. The government will charge you monthly on the excess amount you put over the contribution limit. The TFSA has an annual contribution limit of $7,000, while the RRSP has an annual contribution limit of 18% of the previous year's income, 18% of what you earned last year. It is important for you to keep track of your contribution room so that you don't go over the limits and you don't lose money to useless penalties. And the best place to check is the CRA website, which shows you exactly how much contribution room you have in each of your accounts. It shows you what you've contributed so far in the previous year, and it also shows you what your RRSP contribution limit is based off of your last year's income. The third mistake that commonly happens is withdrawing from your RRSP too early. Now, we talked about RRSP flexibility earlier, but here's the thing. Early withdrawals are expensive, very expensive. Recall that you will lose your contribution permanently if you withdraw from your RRSP too early, and you would pay tax on that withdrawal. And also, you'll miss out on years of compound growth when you do make that early withdrawal. So if you choose to withdraw your RRSP before you get to 65, just know that you're withdrawing a little too early and you're going to pay taxes on it. Now, the exception for this is if you're making that withdrawal because you're trying to key into a home buyer's plan, but you need to think carefully before you start withdrawing money from your RRSP. The fourth mistake that a lot of people also make is they ignore their employer match. So how this works is if your employer offers an RRSP matching contribution, what that means is if, say, you are contributing like 3 or 5% to your RRSP and your employer offers to match that contribution 100%, that means 5% from you, 5% from your employer into your RRSP. That should be your absolute priority to take advantage of that match because it's essentially free money. That means you're essentially getting an extra 5% or whatever percentage your employer is offering into your RRSP, 100% instant return on your investment because 5% from you, 5% from your employer, straight to your retirement. So make sure you take advantage of this. I mean, my employer was offering 5% RRSP match, but I was doing 3%. So that means I was leaving 2% on the table, but I had since corrected that. So now I'm up to 5%, which is the maximum that my employer will match, and they are going to kick in 5% into my RRSP. Now, here's the thing. There's no wrong choice between a TFSA and an RRSP. Both of them are incredibly powerful tools that the government has given to us to build wealth and save for the future. But the key is understanding your current situation, understanding what your income level is, what your goals are, what your timeline is, and choosing the account that aligns with where you are right now and where you want to be. And also remember that this isn't a permanent decision. You can start with one and switch to another as your life changes and things start to move in different directions. You can use both at the same time, depending on how much money you have available to save and invest. You can also adjust your strategy every year. But the key thing is just knowing that these accounts exist and knowing how to use them. The most important thing isn't in picking the right account. The most important thing isn't in picking the perfect account. What is actually important is you get started with saving and investing. So if you're watching this video in the early weeks of the year, feeling motivated to get your finances on track, here's my challenge for you. Pick one of these accounts, set up automatic contribution, and start investing. Even if it's just a small amount, the compound interest growth over the years will be too incredible for you to pass up. And if you found this content very helpful, give this video a thumbs up. And if you want to see more straightforward Canadian personal finance content from me, more straight up money talk, more straight up tips about how to save, how to invest, how to get smarter with your money, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification icon. And let me know in the comments, are you team TFSA or team RRSP? For me, I am team both because I use both of them, and I would like to hear what you're planning for the rest of this year. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next one.